Hello, you're all under arrest. Just kidding. But being arrested here in the United States of America is no laughing matter. In fact, we have the highest rate of incarceration in the world. Thus, academics have coined the term mass incarceration. Though we do understand prison to be a place of rehabilitation and a way to keep our streets safe by keeping criminals off of them, things have kind of run amok and things have gone pretty bad. Nowadays, most laws are geared against those who go through the system to come back up in society once they're released. Secondly, we pay a huge price for the system to exist that we do not need to be spending if it's working so inefficiently. And three, the system of our carceral system unfortunately echoes our past of racism in terms of segregation or even slavery at times due to, some laws and amendments. But some of you may feel that these are necessary evils, that prison helps rehabilitate criminals. I will demonstrate today that that is not true. Secondly, you may be aware of the flaws, but you may not feel like that these flaws directly affect you in any sort of way for it to be something on your agenda to handle. Well, it does. We pay a huge amount of taxes in it, and that money could be better spent elsewhere, and I'll show that today in my speech. And finally, you may understand all these flaws, and you may even understand how it affects you, but you ultimately do not feel any responsibility to be informed or do anything about mass incarceration because you feel like it is not a system you personally created, even though you may in some strange ways benefit from it. That is also untrue because we inherit these systems and they become ours. So we do have a responsibility to be informed. I became interested in this subject because I myself work in a law firm and I have a client named Mary. And Mary was unfortunately arrested 20 years ago for stealing milk to feed her child. Now, in theory, this is terrible and she shouldn't be harshly punished. She was. Her life has been kind of a lot more difficult because of that one instance. And she's a pretty good person. She hasn't ever committed any more crimes beyond that, but that is being held against her forever. So we have to ask ourselves, do these people we interact with daily, how deeply do these systems affect these people who go through the incarceration system, and why is it important for us to think about it? So first things first, we need to talk about the laws that are in place against people who are ex-convicts. According to a University of Pennsylvania journal written by Marie Gottschalk, they state in that journal that states prohibit former offenders from working in many different professions, including plumbing, palm reading, food catering, and even hair cutting. And these are things that often prisoners do spend most of their time doing while they're in prison. So they're not even able to reintegrate the skills they honed back in society once they're released because they are barred legally from doing so. Secondly, we must understand that we pay a huge amount of money. So if that doesn't bother you, that people are unfairly treated by the system, then maybe the fact that you are paying money into it to exist may bother you. In fact, according to EGI.org, on their website page entitled Prison Conditions, it cost taxpayers $87 billion in 2015 for roughly the same level of public safety in 1978 that they achieved with $5.5 billion. So we are wasting tons of money at this. We're throwing money and it's just going into the trash, basically, because we have this bloated system that exists for, unfortunately, to perpetuate racism, which is, unfortunately, my next point, and is the most infamous fact about mass incarceration. According to the book entitled The New Jim Crow, written by Michelle Alexander, who is a civil rights activist, in at least 15 states, blacks are admitted to prison on drug charges at a rate from 20 to 57 times greater than white men. In fact, you can even see this statistic in this graph. This huge bar right here, this is black people in prison. And this tiny little bar right here is white people in prison. Now, you could say that maybe the black people do more crimes, but that's racism. and that this shows clearly that there is a racial bias within our system. So we need to ask ourselves again, are we okay with this? Are we okay with such a huge disparity amongst racial populations within prison echoing our racist path? Are we okay with paying huge amounts of taxes into such a system that fails to even rehabilitate people? And are we okay with these laws and ideas being in place that these people are criminals? Thus, they shouldn't be allowed to work in basic professions such as haircutting. We need to ask these questions and be informed about mass incarceration, because it is an issue that has widely affected most of America, but it hasn't affected white middle class people. It's important for us to be informed about mass incarceration if we ever seek to change it. Thank you so much for listening to my speech. Have a great day.